Well, welcome everyone. I am Shirley Fenton, Managing Director of the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research. Thank you for joining us today in person and via the webcast for this seminar, which is part of our series on e-health strategies. A special welcome to our speaker, Dominic Covey, who is Professor and NSERC AGFA Research Chair in Health Informatics at the University of Waterloo. A special thank you to our seminar series sponsors, Borden, Ladner and Gervais, McKesson, Healthcare Information Management and Communications Canada, Smart Systems for Health Agency, and RIM. Just to let you know, for those of you who are anxious about this part of the whole procedure, the draw for the BlackBerry will be at the end of the seminar. Before we start, I have just a few announcements. The next seminar will be on Wednesday, March 22nd. Ernie Wallace, who is Executive Lead of Strategic Initiatives at Smart Systems for Health Agency, will be talking about one of our province's strategic change initiatives for e-health. He will be speaking on the Ontario Laboratories Information System, or some of you may know it as OLIS. This is a major initiative to allow the secure electronic exchange of laboratory information province-wide. So it will be a very, very interesting talk, I'm sure. The next Health Informatics Boot Camp will be held in Toronto from April 5 to April 8. And we're also hosting a 2-day intensive workshop for health privacy professionals on March 16th and 17th at the University of Waterloo. In recognition of the importance of this workshop, we're offering a special introductory price to the first 20 registrants of $200 off the price. So the last time I checked this morning, we've got a few spaces left for that. So send in your registrations as soon as possible. As you know, the purpose of the eHealth seminar series is to examine the Canadian and Ontario e-health strategies in detail. These seminars will give us the chance to learn more about these strategies and to critically evaluate their progress. So just to let you know about the agenda that we have today, Dominic will speak for about 45 to 50 minutes. Or did you say about an hour? About an hour. This will be followed by a facilitated discussion where you can get to ask questions, including those of you on the webcast. So please signal to me or the other person, Maher, who will have a mic, if you have a question to ask, and just make sure that you hold the mic towards you as you ask your question. I have the pleasure of introducing now David Johnson, who will introduce our speaker. David?
Shirley, thank you very much. I have been asked to introduce Dominic. Dominic needs no introduction to this gathering. Dominic has put this gathering together. But what I will do is express my thanks to Dominic for the leadership that he has given since he joined the university as the AGFA Professor of Health Informatics. This seminar series is just one example of that. Dominic and Shirley and a few other great people have put this together. Shirley made reference to boot camp, to other workshop, just examples of the activities that Dominic has spawned here. And it's a wonderful example of the clustering effect. There is a great clustering going on in attention to health informatics in this university. And this is a great tribute to Dominic and the energy that he's given to this. The topic for today is a superb one and superbly titled In Pursuit of the Electronic Health Record, Holy Grail and a Status. In many ways, the EHR is the symbol of the progress in health informatics. It's taken a long, long time to get something that seems so obvious, but it's difficult. But when we do have an electronic health record in this jurisdiction, and one that's working, I think we will be able to say that health informatics has established its first level of accomplishment, a fundamental level of accomplishment, because so much comes from that electronic health record. I hope we don't have to wait very much longer. I recall that in 1968, when I was a very young law professor, I teamed up with a very senior law professor, the professor of banking at the University of Toronto, Ian Baxter, and we wrote an article for the University of Toronto Law Journal essentially on the checklist society and the certificateless society. And in that article, we sketched out the legal changes that would be necessary over a period of 4 to 5 years, which would cause the check as a method of evidencing payment of payment of transactions. And the certificate, the stock certificate, as evidence of ownership of stock, would be gone in 5 years' time. Very confidently predicted that. The reason we chose 5 years is that Ian was, I think, 64, 65 at that time, and he says, I want this to happen before I die. I had a little bit longer, but I certainly didn't expect that in the year 2006 we still would be relying to the extent that we are on paper stock certificates and paper checks, still far too much in this electronic world. I hope the progress with the electronic health record will be an awful lot faster than that, and I'm confident that it will be faster simply because of the leadership of Dominic and other people of his inspiration and persuasion. So Dominic, we look forward very much to telling you how this Holy Grail is going to become a reality in this Jerusalem, which is Ontario, Canada.
How do I get the this one? David, I think, just blamed me for everything. I assure you I have very, very little to do with progressing toward the electronic health record, so it's, I'll accept a degree of blame, but not completely. What I'd like to do today is talk about a couple of topics, like why am I talking about this, and share that with you. What progress we've had in Ontario, some concepts that you'll need to understand the rest of the thing, as well as documents that you may see from various sources. Look at the human resources and electronic, they called it readiness, the ability of the hospitals to be able to accept the electronic record and contribute to the electronic record. Talk about that. The e-health architecture of the province and concept versus reality, some issues, some interventions, and at the end, some unsolicited advice. I hope you enjoy this, and I will take questions at the end, but proceed during it. Motivation is interesting. Read the Star if you ever dare to read a bad newspaper from another town. But we're in Waterloo, of course, but the Star had a record, a long series of articles that caused a lot of consternation just a few weeks ago. And basically, this summarizes few benefits to show for millions spent, and the critics are sort of like wolves right now around the e-health phenomenon. Another thing I was looking at was an information week. It's a common thing that sends you stuff every week. And it had in there about the UK's healthcare modernization program. And we've had speakers over here talking about how wonderful things are in the UK. Well, it turns out there are a lot of troubles there, too, with regard to what they're doing. And it's not all going that well. There are things happening, but there are problems. That's not to leave everybody out. Let's pick another English-speaking country, Australia. And their Health Connect project has unraveled over the last 6 months. This is a very new, like January of this year. So things are not that well in a number of places. And let's go just south. You may know that Grail is pushing in the United States the concept of RIOs, Regional Health Integration Networks, or Information Networks in that case. And everyone's thought of this as a great potential. Well, it's been made clear that there are major issues with that, like why do it? In the United States, it has a competitive health system. And why would organizations share information? That's a competitive advantage. We found out that they don't in the recent Katrina disaster. So interestingly, just about every country that's trying to do this is having problems, significant challenges in making progress. It's one of the reasons for talking. How well are we doing? Looking at progress in Ontario, first I'd like to talk about what's gone very well and give some credit, because I think in Canada, Alberta has really shown leadership. Ontario is later, but showing leadership in a number of different areas. Well, first of all, I think you have to realize that the concept of electronic health, or e-health, the idea is to do better things in better ways in the health system. Better things mean better products, better patient outcomes. Better ways means more efficiency, and so on. In fact, in Ontario, we've done pretty well, given the world picture. We have an award-winning telehealth system. I was with a group in the United States in Phoenix recently, and they were complaining they can't find anything that succeeded in telehealth. And I said, go to Ontario. We have a very successful network. Amazing work. Credit to Ed Brown and North Network and the other two networks in Ontario. Incredible. operation. Public health, you may have remembered the SARS crisis with the Post-it notes on the wall. Big change. Real incredible information systems progress is being made. There is, SARS talked about the issue of disorder in the development of systems. That's improving. We've seen, for example, major systems that have had problems being moved into smart systems for health agency, where there seems to be a bit of discipline and control over the development of systems. That's a progress. There's some strategic projects that are driven by specific businesses. We heard from Sarah Kramer about the waitlist project, or wait time project. That is a project that is driven by specific provincial agendas. And that's important that we have that kind of driver for these projects. Informatics as a program is growing at a number of places. Conestoga here in our city, George Brown, Ontario Institute of Technology, York University, Centennial, McMaster are all evolving programs in this area. We have our boot camp. I didn't list us in this one. All hospitals are now linked on the Smart Systems for Health Agency network. They can plug into each other. What they can do is up for contention, but we finally gotten the place wired. We have some incredible projects underway. You heard one, I think it was last year, from Glenn Kieran's on the local portal. We've had other ones as well in many different places. So there are individual areas of progress. And we have some obviously amazing people. And I tell you, from my vantage point in meeting people, some of the people involved in these projects are incredible. Knowledge level, commitment, energy, and so on. So we've got a start. We've got something, and we're not so bad relative to the world. However, we've got a long way to go. And I don't think everybody realizes the journey is arduous. I doubt that we'll have a full electronic health record in 10 years. Sorry, David. I think there's still a lot to be done. Pieces, yes. But a full electronic health record, not that long. Sounds like one of my graduate students crying in the back because I torture them, but we welcome all ages to this session. I just want to point out a few concepts to continue and talk. First of all, what do I mean by electronic health record? This is not a well-articulated definition. Conceptually, what I mean is a lifetime record of an individual's health. And it's an integration of the electronic medical record, which is physicians and other care providers, the electronic patient record, a name given to hospitals and institutions records, and the personal health record, which pretty well doesn't exist yet, which is where you, your doctor, perhaps you on your own even, create a record of all the things from your vantage point. In the United States, this is a growing phenomenon, even being used by public health agencies as a means to do syndromic surveillance, where we find out that a lot of people in an area have a problem, and it might indicate a disease, or in the case of the United States, focus on bioterrorism being a possibility. This electronic health record includes everything from, they call it from womb to tomb, the birth records, childhood, immunization, school, dentistry, optometry, adult health records each time you're sick, and doctor's offices or the hospital, and then as you leave this mortal coil, the terminal care and death records, that capstone of your contribution to the record community. Some other concepts. In Ontario, there's something called the Health System Transformation Objectives. If you've never heard of those before, this is a vague collection of goals that people have. I call it a loose array of variably stated, but they are stated objectives. People want to increase the efficiency of the health system. What does that mean? We don't know. To access and share information, to be able to improve utilization, and there's zillions of others. We're involved in an activity right now in a provincial committee of collecting these together so we know what the reasons are people are doing these kinds of things. It's not clear. In addition, there is something very clear, because it's politically mandated. It's called the Health Transformation Agenda. These are specific government priorities to change the health system. For example, to improve access to family care, to expand the number of physicians. We have a new campus in the city being established along with that as a driver. Reducing wait times, you heard Sarah Kramer. Creating the local health integration networks, which is a bringing of a formal regionalization to the province of Ontario, and prevention and promotion type of activities. So there are some specific things like this that are objectives, and that's what when I use the term, you'll know what I mean by that. So a few others. I'll use a term in this talk, superstructural systems. What I mean by here are systems that are shareable at the provincial level. These are repositories, for example, of laboratory information, It could be registries of the names and of authorized providers, institutions, names of hospitals, and so on. They're intended as key resources to be used by everybody and will be a key part of the electronic health record because this is where this information will be focused. So if you want to use the electronic health record as a provider, you had better be on the registry and authorized to do it. And some of the examples of these superstructural systems are the OLIS that Shirley's already mentioned and the Ontario Drug Benefit System. There are supporting systems for that, which are a significant amount of work. For example, these are to allow the shareable resources and enable them to happen. And they include things like connecting the institutions, transporting information from place to place, system integration support that allow systems to transfer information from one system to another, and electronic email, secure email, Provincial Health Network itself is one example of that, and the Enterprise Master Patient Index, which is an attempt to create a way where my record, maybe named Dom Covey and another one named Dominic Covey, somehow get to be united together under a single identifier, no matter where I might have my care. A few more. Infrastructural systems, what we mean by that is the systems that support the daily operations within the health institutions. An example include laboratory information systems, pharmacy information systems in the hospital or in the pharmacy practice, wherever it might be. And I'll have something very specific to say about the issues with that. This is a substantial issue in the province of Ontario. By business-driven e-health programs, what I mean is programs that have a reason for existence. They, for example, are seeking a desired outcome like shorter wait lists. They're going to have some impact or effect on processes, patients, providers, somebody. It's going to make a difference. So you might have a PACS system for better patient care, a picture archiving and communication system. Or the reason you may have a network of PACS is to change the nature of diagnostic imaging care and allow, for example, consortia of radiologists to provide care instead of every institution duplicating that resource totally at its facility. In this case, there exists a specific business objective. Very important. An implication, by the way, is that not all programs have that. And finally, strategy with regard to e-health is the articulation of specific, measurable business goals. Business goal might include improving access to care to the level of national standards, which, as you know, are being debated. And the e-health program that supports that is the wait time information system with a provincial enterprise master patient index and all of the things that go along with that, like doing the accountability agreements with the institutions and training people and so on. This is the idea in a diagram, and this is actually from a committee. It's only partially filled out deliberately here. That shows the provincial level of agenda and relates that to specific provincial objectives, or in this case, agenda programs, and then says which are the systems that support that, and then under that, which are the systems that enable that. And you notice over here in the final column a critical one, which is the institutional systems that are the data sources for these and the quality sources for that data. So this is the kind of thing we need. We need this kind. This is a strategy now. This isn't just tactics. This isn't just somebody's plan. This is not e-health. This is health system priorities driving e-health, which is really a critical outcome. In case you don't know about it, Canada Health Info, I just wanted to say, is an agency that fosters this type of thing and is intending on accelerating it and building on what we already have. And Smart Systems for Health Agency is the technology deployment agency for the province of Ontario. So there's some definitions there. And you can see that on their website, which is where it's taken from. Now, some facts and beliefs that people have. First of all, when I've talked with large groups, they say, I say we have to do something about e-health. And people say the biggest problem is that everybody assumes we already have an electronic system. They don't know that when you go to an office, you repeat your name and basic information. In one case, in the CCAC's, the Clinical Care Access Centers in Toronto, 26 separate transactions of information are required on paper in order to get a patient through the system. 26, actual number. People think that the magnitude isn't so big. It is an enormous problem. It far exceeds any other thing we're trying to do. Remember that just simply trying to get a new air traffic control system has broken the backs of companies and cost billions of dollars, and it still isn't there in the United States and Canada. So the magnitude is there of investment, of what it costs to do this, which is many times what we currently have in hand, the time it requires, which is many years, the impact of existing systems and the lack of data standards, meaning you call it potato and I call it potato. That type of thing within the health system is a big problem because different people use different terms for the same clinical phenomenon. Limitations of existing resources, human resources, a big problem. And finally, the fact that we're dependent massively on consultants, and that's been a big issue with the STAR in Toronto. Nonetheless, a necessity because we don't have the people that we can hire to do this. The roles and limitations of various agencies aren't understood. And I won't get into that today, but before we critique something, we should know what it can do. And the provincial government has put certain restrictions over its agencies. They can't do certain things. They aren't even allowed, in a number of instances, to tell people what they do. They're required to do that through the political mechanisms. Interesting. There are many politically active technical gurus in the province who are out there shaking up the place and complaining. And you look behind some of the things, the criticism, they've been there. And one of the dangers is not to find the problem, it's to shoot at everything without really understanding what the issues are. Many believe that other jurisdictions have got it all worked out. You saw that clearly not to be true. Many think we know everything we need to and we know how to do it. This is an area that still requires research, significant research. It is not all ready. You can't just plug it in. It is like the computer revolution before we had all the tools. It simply is not ready. And in fact, the biggest thing is many of the problems we're facing are human-based. Issues of adoption of these technologies are still major issues and really are frustrating the agencies that are trying to deliver systems. One of the things I think we have to think about, and this is from some work we've done, what is the electronic health record? If nothing else, it is a combination of users' needs for things they want to do for us as patients, either to take care of us or to do research or to manage the cost of the health system. This basically says that the nature and structure of the electronic record must respond to this, yet virtually no effort has ever been put in anywhere in the country in this dimension. Interesting. There's no user of information, there's no point for it. If there's no usage of information, there's no point for it either. The electronic health record, let's say this somewhat obliquely, but is a repository of health-related information that different kinds of users require to do different kinds of things that they need to do and are authorized to do for any of these people. Patients, society, like research, or other approved beneficiaries. If that isn't the reason for the EHR, and if that isn't the cause for what it is and how it's structured, then we don't have a basis for the electronic health record. It isn't an end in itself. It is a result of needs and users and usages. So the electronic health record is the aggregated result of all these people defining what they want to do and getting the information it required to support these. There's nothing more, nothing less than that. No fantasy involved, and that work to define that has not been done. There has been a limited set of projects done in the province related to something called an emergency health record, to create a basic record for initial emergency care and a similar one for physician's office. Neither have been heavily promoted. Some of the e-health projects. Now, the superstructure of these shared systems, just so you know what they are, the laboratory's information system, which brings together, in theory, all the laboratory information in the province. We have a talk on that here on March 22. The ODB program, which is meant to have all drugs in it, but it doesn't. Right now, it's for poor and old people, and no dosage information. So it's an incomplete registry. It's built right now on a system for reimbursement related to a payment related to drugs. That's going to be expanded, and I'll talk about that. But right now, it's a very, very basic information resource. The wait time you've heard about from Sarah, it's a repository of when things are to be done and how long they take. For example, it could be cancer therapy as one example. The e-physician project is an attempt to bring physicians in Ontario along, and it's now embodied in a concept called Ontario MD. I'll talk briefly about that. And the telehealth network. These are the things that are shareable at the highest level in the province. You notice I didn't put EHR in there because it would be somehow above this in collecting, and this would be parts of the EHR, perhaps, that are here. These systems require supporting systems like the Enterprise Master Patient Index, client, provider, facility, and other registries, the network to connect everything, and secure email. They are required systems and are huge investments in the province right now to support these high-level systems. The provincial strategies are vague things, and I have a problem with this. There's now called a diagnostic imaging strategy underway. And it was a talk in our October talk by Diane Beattie related to their implementation, if you want, of a strategy within southwestern Ontario. The reason I told you what a strategy is many of these things are actually tactics as opposed to strategies. The LIN planning is underway. That's a strategy for LIN planning. There is a continuing care strategy related to e-referral, the ability to move data from the CCACs to the institutions, for example. And, of course, the electronic health record, there is work underway on a purported strategy for the electronic health record. But are these strategies or not is a question. In addition, there's some management systems. Ian spoke last time about the report card, the performance systems in the province. This is a resounding success, this system, because it actually is doing something and will provide information that people can use. The infrastructural capabilities underlie all this, and this would be the ability to feed data into the electronic health record. I'll talk in detail, and human resources capacity, something left almost entirely with no support whatsoever. Just quickly then on each of them, and I won't spend much time, I'll give you a quick view and critique, and you'll see the details as you see other talks. OLIS and Ontario Drug Database I put together in one laboratory, the other drugs. The purpose they have is to make lab or drug information available across institutions. They're both repositories of information, and the access is either through a viewer, which is an issue, or through integrating institutional systems directly with them, which is the long-term solution. Some of the issues. Included things like what's included in them. Unfortunately, not all labs are initially included. There's a subset. Eventually, they will all be included. And not all drugs or all people are included. So that type of problem with these systems is an issue. Some of these systems will lack complete data. ODB lacks dosage information. Right now, in my understanding, this may have been corrected, is that the OLIS lacks the ability to define which laboratory and even which type of instrument was used to do the actual information, the actual studies that were done. The adoption is a major issue in both, primarily because using a viewer, people are not as likely to use the system, and it won't be until they're integrated that they'll be able to be easily used. And right now, there are enough problems with the adoption in OLIS that a separate project has been spawned to deal with that. Eventually, the ODB system, the benefits program, will be all drugs, all people, which will cover the problem. I don't know how long that will be. That is barely even underway planning-wise at the present time. The wait time information system, electronic master patient index, the purpose is to track wait times and support the accountability agreements. The nature is an information system, including this registry with matching capability. The access is either, again, through a viewer, which is a problem, or by integrating institutional systems, which is long-term. Some of the issues in this. Unfortunately, the wait time system, and you heard this from Sarah, does not include the entire wait, like the time you wait to get to your family doctor. It's only from the time you see the specialist who orders a CT or MRI or chemotherapy is ordered or something. Then the wait list starts ticking. They can be gamed. People can put information in late, for example, and it looks like the wait times are better. The interface, it doesn't say people will do this. It just says that in the past people have done this. Interface is, again, through viewer. If you have a viewer, it's going to impact workflow. You could have viewers, and people have to go from the system they're using in the emergency department over to a viewer to use, like a web interface, and that's going to take time. And the question is, will people do it, and will it affect workflow? The adoption is a major issue, and when we're stuck with the viewer. And this EMPI strategy is an ad hoc strategy that may turn into a provincial strategy, but it is necessary in order to create the wait time capability. May or may not be the future provincial solution here. The ePhysician Ontario MD, basically, the original reason was to get the electronic medical record into the electronic health record. There's doctor's office stuff. It's moved into integrating physicians and creating a portal. That loss that's occurred on getting the integration of the electronic medical record into the EHR could be a serious problem. The nature, it's a web-based portal and an information and communications resource. The access is through typical web-type browser. The issues, it is not clear what's actually being delivered. That's still an open issue. $150 million been put into this project. Not all spent, but it's there for spending. The completeness, will we eventually or when bring in the electronic medical records from the physician's office? If we don't, the value of this is really questionable. And the adoption, will physicians adopt it? Will it actually go into use? Open question. We're still at the early phases of that issue. Public health telehealth is a big and major set of projects. So put them together. This is the connecting people and e-consults and education and so on. And this, of course, is public health. They're both same kind of idea. They're both excellent systems. This one to detect epidemics, and this one to provide distance health services. Public health is an information, and telehealth is a network with connectivity and services. Public health is accessed through a portal. Telehealth has a network. You can just go to an institution and be connected directly. The issues, one of the things about this system is that other than building on what's there, it's one of our success stories. Really incredible activity. Right now there are 3 networks. By, I think it's April 1, they'll be integrated into one under a single leadership and a single business plan. Underneath those systems, these supporting systems include the provincial EMPI, which is stuck up at the top temporarily. And basically, the reason it exists at that level right now is to allow the support of the wait time information system. But one of the big issues is some regions have already gone with an EMPI. How do you create a provincial architecture of EMPIs? I mean, where you get multiple systems doing matching. How does that all work together? There's some challenges there. Provider, client, facilities registries, many, many issues. They're still not in place. And who owns them and who keeps them up to date is a major issue. And when will they be ready? Network connectivity and communications. No big deal about that one, except getting 300,000 connection points connected, which is a big undertaking. It's going to take many, many years. Secure email is a powerful capability for sharing confidential messages, but who will get it when? Can you do all the things you can do with Outlook, for example? When will you be able to do that? And will it be adopted without that? What security level are you providing? At the beginning, it will not be as secure as it could potentially be. Is it adequately secure? Many believe it's overly secure. Still many, many issues. And how do you authenticate that I, in fact, can transmit a message? And at the user level, how do we know that users are going to follow through on the appropriate standards for this? And there's a human dimension to this. The strategies, I've mentioned the PACS strategy for putting in picture archiving and communication systems. The LIN planning strategy, I put some questions here. How will this be handled? Right now, for example, we have the LINs, the local health integration networks, responsible in some sense for information management, information technology, but without a budget. Eventually, they will have the budget. What will be the roles between the institutions and the organizations? Regional planning has not been a strength, for example, in our region. There's very little that's done related to IT, information technology, and information management. There's a referral capability, really important to integrate community with the institutional care. Very, very important capability, but we still have very, very limited resources at the CCAC level. The way this has really taken off in Toronto is University Health Network took it upon itself to unite with the CCACs and other organizations. So the institutions went out. But the CCACs are very marginally resourced for this kind of activity. Very big issue of how do we build if we don't have the funding and the capability, the human resources capabilities. But it's incredibly important. The electronic health record is a strategy, but it's really, I'm not sure it is a strategy. It should be a strategy for creating it, but defining what it is critically important. You know what this is already. One of the problems is we're all talking and meeting and looking at whether systems will deliver the EHR, but nobody has a definition of it in this province. It does not exist. I think I know what it is, but there's no stake in the ground. There's a lack of will to define it, because as soon as you define it, then you have to deliver it. And you get held to your feet to the fire to deliver it. I mentioned that the costs and so on are underestimated. The feeder systems that feed data into it, I'll come into in great detail, major limitations. And unfortunately, the business drivers, i.e. what the EHR is going to do, is not well defined, and that's the way you should define it. big challenges. I want to talk about particularly human resources and e-health readiness. And what I mean by e-health readiness is the ability of our hospitals, particularly, I'll focus only on hospitals, to connect to an electronic health record and to share information across the network with each other for the patients that they share among their different facilities or who move from place to place. One of the big issues is human resources capacity to do all of e-health. Canada Health Infoway has estimated we need 2,000 people, health informatics professionals, now. We produce less than 100, I think it's less than 80 in the entire country right now per year. Now, a lot of programs are coming on, but they're going to take years to deliver people. The Conestoga program is over 4 years long. So we have a challenge, otherwise known as a problem. The key area is applied health informatics. The people will put these systems out there, deploy them, maintain them, make them all work, implement them is a proper term. We also know the people to teach those people. I can assure you there aren't many. There are very, very few in the country. So the issues is we don't have a competency definition or certification standard in this area, and we should. Lives depend on it. We don't have a process for doing that. That's under discussion with the COACH organization, which I hope will take leadership in that regard. That's the Health Informatics Association in Canada. There are few accessible programs. You have to go on site and spend 4 years. More of it needs to be distance. It's a major problem. And very little funding. You have to do this from within your own resources. Ontario Hospital Association, in its study back in 2002, estimated that at least $50 million was required in the province of new money to seed these kinds of programs. I don't know of any new resources in that area. It's kind of everybody on their own. There's a huge compensation gap. As soon as you do train people, industry snaps them up at several times the salary sometimes you can get within the health system. Big problem. And staff education. I talked to somebody in one organization that said, how much do you have for staff education? He said, $2,500. I said, oh, that's not bad per person. He said, no, $2,500. I have $2,500 for staff education in my IS department. Well, we need a lot more than that because we have IS departments that are filled with people that don't know much at all about health informatics, the very discipline that they're supposed to be delivering on. Big problem. And obviously, we need leadership that does something about this. And there is some that's emerging, although not at the fiscal level, mainly at the content level. The readiness of the feeder systems. I'm going to just go through a couple of slides. And if you want these slides, I'd be happy to share them with you electronically and give you a couple points. I won't touch every point in here. The issue of the readiness of institutions is, are they able to take these day-to-day systems that they have to support operations and connect them outward to other systems into the electronic health record up in the province or whatever. This is where data and information are captured, and without it, you don't have the information and the necessary quality. If it isn't good here, it's good nowhere. The issues, we have hospitals without complete suites of systems that don't have capabilities to do certain departments. Within systems, the data is very incomplete. Management data is often totally missing, related to how much time procedures take and so on. A lot of legacy technologies, very old systems you can't even easily interface to using modern interface technologies. No data standards. Different terms are used different places. And it's challenging to integrate these with external systems. Very little experience in doing this, high costs, many barriers. Some vendors refused for a period of time to even let people connect their systems because they wanted everybody to buy their system. And, of course, the problem of human resources. We did a survey just recently. And again, the big points here, we started off with a paper that was by the EHR working group of the Ontario Hospital Association. We needed data to inform what's going on. This is a committee that's looking at the hospital's role in e-health, Hospitals e-Health Council it's called. We did a lot of research at the time and looked at what's been done in terms of looking at surveys for readiness and research in this area. Began in 2003, and it was actually done in 2005 from March till April. Got 156 surveys out, 142, 91% response rate. And they did a lot of stuff, including Hillary Short, president of the OHA, writing personal notes to all people. So we got a very good response to that. Survey team members include people from companies, Praxia Information Intelligence, Hay Group, and absolutely excellent support, the Ontario Hospital Association, representatives from CIOs and so on, and I think there's just one academic in this group. Gathered baseline data on the hospital's electronic patient record. Now, this is not looking at the electronic health record that does not exist. This is the record set that exists at institutions. And looked at how this is going in terms of the systems being able to capture that kind of data and ultimately be able to share it to some central resource called the electronic health record. This slide will bore you to death, so I won't go through it, but there are many indicators in this report. It goes down to great depth, so we can tell, for example, the gap related to order entry or results reporting or barriers to implementation or interorganizational master patient indexes or data sharing. So there's a great deal of data, and this is available, being widely released now. Results are reported by indicators. There's the detail per indicator I've mentioned and many more. The results are shown as a gap between what the hospitals have right now and what is needed to inform, if you want, an electronic health record and communicate with it. And they're broken down by peer groups for it. This is a measure of, this is in this case community hospital peer group. This red area is the gap between capabilities that the institutions have and what they need to participate in the electronic health record. And we know that institutions have been generous in their assessment of themselves here, and yet we have this gap. I worried primarily about what I'll call creative prevarication, i.e. saying I have more than I do. But even with that, you can see a substantial gap. Details don't matter. And quite a few institutions even fall below, obviously fall below the average. Comparing results reporting and data sharing, for example, if we look at this previous one here and put it above, it's even worse when you look at regional data sharing. Looking at this, a small portion of the province really can do significant data sharing, and there's only one institution that claims complete capability in that regard. And you'll have to judge. We don't identify the institutions so that people don't feel they have to defend themselves. Order entry. And this, by the way, I know is an overestimate. This is the ability to electronically place orders by doctor. And in fact, this includes nurses and other people electronically putting orders in. We did not get adequate segregation of physicians' order entry. It is general order entry. For physicians, it's a much, much greater gap. What this says is that order entry, the point at which you say why you want to do a study, an exam, or whatever it might be, and where you get feedback that might say, for example, maybe this is a dumb test, you did it yesterday. You don't get it because somebody else enters the data for you and ignores the advice that the system gives. And by the way, we have an important company locally that's specialized in this area called Medicalis. If you're interested, it's on the web, and Medicalis Corp, www.medicaliscorp.com, I believe. Send that to anybody. Order entry capability across the province is a major gap, just showing the differences here, quite significant. And this is by the 14 LINs, the new regional organization within the province of Ontario, which is being impressed on the province right now. You want to know what doesn't have a gap? Directory services, like who's where doing what, what's their phone number in the hospital, pretty good. And patient registration systems, very, very ubiquitous. The moderate gaps are in areas like, which I think are more than moderate, but results reporting, order entry, and clinical documentation. When it comes to regional data sharing, the ability to match records up across multiple institutions and true interoperability, it's an area of very large gap. And the gap in usage is greater than the gap in the capability. In other words, you have systems not being used yet. So it captures both. Key priorities people identified, creating what we need to feed the electronic health record, the electronic patient record. They need it. Well, we know that. We can see it from the gap. And reducing medical errors is a primary business driver. A lot of readiness variation. You've seen that. A lot of difference between what an IS department is and what a DIS department is somewhere else. Very, very different. In supporting applications or not, in providing technical and architectural support or not, in re-engineering, and we're doing a deeper survey now, virtually none of that within the province in a formal way. And clinical champions of these systems, because in the budget of a hospital, you have to argue this X-ray facility versus that computer system. Finally, the key barriers that people identified, lack of financial support is the primary one, staffing shortage is the second one, and end-user acceptance or adoption is the third one. This is a nice big picture that shows the capability versus the gap around all these different things. These are the sharing kinds of capabilities, the ability to share information. It's the worst case, and it gives you some idea of the magnitude. We released the results in August to hospitals only. We've been using it for some deeper analysis. For example, trying to figure out how family health teams might relate with hospitals and CCACs and so on. We're trying to leverage this information to give better guidance to the institutions on how to proceed, and using it for advocacy to create funding to be able to address regional disparities or capability gaps in almost anywhere in the province. Some of the implications of this survey are quite important. Historically, Ontario's had low levels of investment. And in 2001, OHA indicated 1.6%. Recently, we saw data of 2.8%, but it's highly in question as to what that means. Others have put it anywhere in the range from about 1.4 to 3.0. So we're in a process right now of looking at a deep survey of actual investment and what is being invested in. Similar across Canada, by the way, the number across Canada has been about 1.8%, relatively recent study. The United States, from 3 to 5%. I did work at Mount Sinai in New York, and it was 7.58%. Banks, 10%. God knows what other companies are, but more than 5% from knowledge industries, of which health is a primary example. Interestingly, the survey shows a gap in capability in this electronic patient record and ability to communicate with an EHR. Well, if we don't have that data, we don't have an EHR. So if you don't have feeder systems, you can't feed the EHR. You can't give data. You can't give quality data. You can't give data that's comparable among different institutions. And you know the old adage, garbage in or nothing means garbage out or nothing out. Very important and still a significant quotation. The EHR right now is more of a fantasy and a goal of, I think, far-out types like me. It's not really an operational goal. It could be, if you put it together right now, a source of very poor data, incomplete data, sparse data, and without correcting the gap, we're nowhere. So I'm not really suggesting just throwing money at this thing, but I am suggesting we need to do intelligent intervention in this particular problem, and we know it's real. We need some interventions, and these are ones that I and others have come up with, is start making investments, but based on demonstrated impacts. There exists virtually no studies that are cogent and transportable that show that this investment in technology makes a difference anywhere. A very, very important thing. We need to get evidence of positive impacts, not just predictions, and almost everything you read is about predictions, not effects, unfortunately. And why are we going to increase investment unless we know it's there? If we're running a hospital and have to make a choice between an X-ray machine and a computer. Simulate extra-institutional investment in regional solutions. If we can invest at a provincial level in these superstructural systems, surely we can invest at the infrastructural level in the systems to feed them, or we're living a fantasy, like building the cars and the highways without the gas stations. Problem. Reduce the number of options is one definite thing. We've got to get more regional sharing. The fact that we have 3 or 4 institutions locally and have 4 separate IS departments and 4 separate systems with 2 different vendors is dumb. We need to somehow regionally coalesce that and make it into more sense. And that might mean that the investment is better spent. Obviously, we still need adequate investment. Obviously, we're going to have to deal with key areas first, the major feeders, based on what the provincial goals are. If you need certain feeders in order to achieve certain business goals, you better fix that part of the system first. And we obviously need to address data standards, so we have similar data, and the ability of systems to be able to interoperate, at least at a basic level, where they can communicate with each other. Some conclusions. We got a problem, at least at the local level. Why we're there is debatable, but there is a significant capability gap. How we should proceed is debatable, but that we must proceed is not debatable if David's objective of, even within his lifetime, having an electronic health record that's meaningful is going to be realized. And I think a lot of us have that dream. And I made the point here is the electronic health record a modern-day holy grail, which, by the way, is an empty cup. Implemented properly, it could be just a cup of tea. How do you get rid of this dumb thing? I never know. How do you get rid of this? I don't know. Anyway, we ignore it. And implemented properly, it could just be the cup of tea needed to address the system. You escape and then come back? Oh, okay. I made the point that a cup of tea isn't a cup of tea without the tea, and without the tea, we're nowhere. Is this the empty health record? There's an article just appearing this month on that. Now, the point here, if you go to provincial presentations, you'll see a diagram like this. I drew it the same way, with a bunch of pillars that are supporting electronic health record that's going to be used by users who expect a lot from it. And it's built on, down here, local systems and certain provincial capabilities. But public health, drugs, labs, et cetera, are the things, including primary care. Is this what we have, though? And this is what's going to happen. A system like Swiss cheese with pieces not there and supports structures that don't really do it, are we going to arrive? Can we fix this? If we don't, we're going to have extraordinarily disappointed users with expectations and money invested. I like this cartoon. This is a building. It could be the university. It could be electronic health record as a concept. The way the president, David, you were one conceiving it. The architect beautified it up just after the Health Informatics people get it. Glass tower, big place. Of course, the zoning committee modified it, trees. This is what we actually get, though, a temporary structure. I think we have to be real careful of this kind of planning and this kind of thinking. We end up with a lot of partial solutions and embarrassment if we don't do them correctly. Some of the high-level issues that lead to this. Like, what's behind this? Well, obviously, there's a lot of energy, a lot of commitment, a lot of goal of people to help people. There's no lack of that. One of the problems is the focus on tactical electronic solutions and the intolerance to deeply understanding the health system and the challenges that we face. In other words, we're not looking at the business. We're looking at the technology. We're not looking at our purpose. We're looking at how we're going. We're not looking at what. We're looking at how. That's a mistake, a fundamental mistake. And every time you get a whole bunch of people together with a whole bunch of money, which is what eHealth is now, billions of dollars, you're going to have a whole lot of practical stuff done. And it better get its business case at least transplanted onto it. The lack of the definition of electronic health record is a major problem. We need a definition. We need to have a view of what it is, or we can't meet the expectations on it. The lack, or at least the failure to articulate a strategic business basis, eHealth itself, and EHR particularly, we can't just keep putting systems in without showing they're effective. We don't do that with drugs. We don't do that with surgery. Why are we doing it with computers? The underestimation of the effort and cost required to achieve real benefit. And it isn't the technology. That's like a quarter or less of the investment in is hardware and software and all the standard stuff. The real investment, $3 to $4 per dollar, according to the other literature and other sectors, is that the human resources changes, restructuring, training, re-engineering, organizational change, change management. If you don't do those things, it doesn't work. There's data to back that up. The centration on these superstructural systems. As much as I believe I want to build the electronic health record, and I might need an OLIS, the fact is, without the lab data, OLIS is an empty hut. It's nothing. You can't have systems the way they are now at the local level. Lack of champions. And this indicates that a number of projects can occur without someone really driving it from the ministry's objectives, whatever they might be, and sometimes articulating them as a political problem. Maybe the reason we're putting PACS in is to change the way we pay radiologists. We'll say it if that's the reason, because we better have the information in the system to support that strategy. That's a viable strategy. Change the cost and the distribution of money in the health system. But we got to be honest about that and take the flak at the beginning. The failure to build adequate human resources capacity is a real Achilles heel in this thing. This dependence on consultants, while necessary in a transitional sense, is horrible because people are exporting large amounts of money. You look at consultant salaries at 2 and 3 times what you normally pay people, and they're going elsewhere. They're coming from elsewhere and going elsewhere in other provinces. They're really not building capacity here. Yet we sit here trying to build capacity with no support for it other than the standard educational system. I don't know, something wrong there. And then the whole process within the ministries of how you get a project, how do you get a proposal in. Once you get your MB-20, you're going to go to heaven no matter what happens. You can swear or kill somebody, you still go to heaven. Once you've gotten the approval, you're gone. Well, that's crazy. You've got to look at projects and look at progress and so on, and not just running down a rail. And innovation, bringing it in. How do you bring innovations into a system built around strictly vendor-type capacity? We need experiments. We need our universities and our health informatics people doing research to try some of these things, demonstrate them, get them worked out. We don't even know what the requirements are for some of the things we want to do. And it takes a huge part of consulting projects is defining these intricate requirements with a limited amount of stakeholder involvement. This is for the consultants. I spent 15 years as a consultant, so I'm cursing myself. We all experience loss in our lives, but it is perhaps most tragic when we lose a cherished client. This could be eHealth in Ontario, and the consultants will be crying. Interventions. What needs to be done? Well, I think we need to create a group of people, somebody, some group, somewhere, that looks at the big picture, looks at the problem, concentrates on the problem. To heck with the solutions. Look at what's really the problem, and look at the linkage between problems and how we might deal with it. And there are many policy issues, there are many legal issues that need to be addressed. So the chain that would enable it isn't just technology, it's a whole series of alterations in the way we do things. Get a panel together to look at the true nature and magnitude of the eHealth challenge. I'm a number of major international organizations, and we don't have this either. We bring them together, but we don't have a standard way of doing this. Conceptualize a strategic, business-driven framework for eHealth, and a part of it, the electronic health record, and put all projects into this framework. Even if it's, like I said, transplanting a head onto a body after the do it. Get the reason we're doing it. Then we can make decisions this versus that. Before that, they're all equal. Move project development into an agency, and it happens to be right now Smart Systems, and I'm neither praising them nor knocking them. At least there's an organization that has a provincial mandate to do this. It's not little developments within various areas within the ministry. It is a focal place for doing development, and if SSHA can't do it, fix it. Develop and fund the transformation of these systems at the bottom level into eHealth and EHR-ready systems, because without that, we've got nothing. There's no money being dedicated to that right now, other than institutions on their own. Invest in EHR capacity. No new money in that area that I've ever seen. And re-engineer the processes within the agencies that do this kind of thing so that we can get the recognition that what we're dealing with is not all cut and dried, anything but it. That there may need to be experiments, there may need to be demonstrations, there may need to be real research done, and evaluation done to see what's right, what will or won't work. It needs to be funded. This is kind of a cute one. This is a gratuitous cartoon. See the blam doctors carrying. It's called horse hospitals. I showed this at Guelph and they got very upset. I don't know. Some unsolicited advice, and my cartoon follows this. There's a consultant here with a new insight, so send them in anyway. These are some personal reactions I've been in the field 38 years now. God help me in the field. Point, fads come and go. The only difference is how many people, how many dollars are behind them. Right now, the EHR is a fad. It needs to be turned into a functioning, valuable system. It needs to be something that has a business case. It's immeasurably more important overall to determine what we want to accomplish than how we're going to do it. It's a constant thing. If you work with graduate students, they hate you for this. You want to do their thesis, get it done. But what's the problem? What's the real issue here? What's the underlying thing? You're going to do something. You're going to have to understand that. And this has never been articulated. Vietnam, I'm a student of warfare, mainly strategic warfare. But Vietnam taught that strategy and war fighting are different. In Vietnam, they got cold beer. You've seen it in the movies. It's real. And hot music to the front. But they lost the war. Why? They didn't have objectives. They didn't have a goal in terms of outcomes. Strategy means generalship in Greek. It means leadership in the way we use the word. Strategy means the goals, desired outcomes need to exist, and the projects and systems are only a means to achieve this. They are not an end in itself. Not computing for computing's sake. Art may be for art's sake, but not computing for computing's sake. EHR is only a means, not an end. It is a way of getting somewhere. We've got to know where we want to go and what we want to do. We won't have anything unless we have that outcome known. And either we get it right, or the EHR will permanently damage health informatics, and it's already having that effect. So much in the province that you'll begin to see the word EHR systematically deleted from a variety of communications, because people are realizing that this is chasing something that is a real big thing. And we'll talk more about e-health and specific objectives, hopefully, in the future. But if we don't do that, the people in the field who are doing this are going to damage their credibility and probably damage their careers. And finally, I'll give a quotation from Winston Churchill. However beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dominic. A lot of thought has gone into that presentation, and I'm going to have to think about it for some time just to realize all the things that you've put into that presentation myself. So we would invite questions from the audience. Maher has got the mic on that side. Questions from the web as well. So anybody want to give us a question? Don.
Actually, it's not a question, Dominic. It's a small correction. The $150 million isn't all be spending on the e-physician portal. Significant parts of it are going into equipment for doctors and change management processes. I don't know the exact ratios, but it's not.
It is the total funding under the concept of e-physician is $150
Yeah,
million.
e-physician, yeah,
Yeah,
but it does contain several.
Oh, no, the
different
portal is
components.
not $150 million.
Yeah, okay. It just looked
Good-
that
that's
way
a
on
very good
your
point.
slide.
Yeah, good point.
Questions? Well, while people are thinking, oh, there's a question. Yes, Frank. Oh, I think pass that down.
When I hear you talk about the e-health and EHR problem, I'm reminded again of the office automation activities that happened in the 60s and 70s, mostly 70s. Because many of the things that you say, people were talking about then in any kind of office automation. Why is it that the health industry cannot learn from the banking industry or from some other industry of how to automate?
I have personal theories. I don't know the scientific answer. I've never looked at this study, but someone actually should do an incredible, I'll call it sociological study of that, because it is an important question. There are a number of things. One is people within the health system tend to get totally wrapped up in the health system and seldom look outside of the health system for new paradigms, frameworks for thinking, algorithms, whatever it might be. They seldom look outside the health system. One beautiful exception to that is the recent safety flap, where we said, 50,000, 80,000 people are dying a year. And all of a sudden, people said, gee, well, who else does safety? And they discovered the airline industry. And we heard a whole series of incredibly great talks on the FAA and the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, Federal Aviation Administration, and the different things that they do, the way they did things, like, for example, blameless reporting. They have another term for blame. You don't get blamed if you report something. You'll be anonymous, and you won't be held. They also talked about the nuclear reactor industry, which, of course, has suffered under a safety umbrella. It'll come back out as we reintroduce nuclear power in Ontario. And a number of people went off and studied that and brought an immense amount of knowledge. And then suddenly you saw the same kinds of, even the same images. But by and large, those areas were engineers who had gone over to the health system, kind of brought things over. It isn't usual for the average health person to look outward like that. I mean, you tend to be enough things in there that they're hermetic. That's one issue. The second issue is once we take someone into the health system, whether it's information services or nursing, we don't educate them. By and large, we feed off them until they're an empty hulk, and that's it. And whatever the experience they gained is the education that they have. Very little investment in staff education in the health system. It's been a huge problem. I don't think there's any lack of intelligence or curiosity. There's brilliant work done within the research and patient care and so on. Beyond that, I don't know. The fact that it's so busy that they ignore a lot of other things, I think, seems to be the primary issue. But good question and should be scientifically answered. Bill, you have a question? Get microphone there, and then there.
Thanks. Dahlia Fayak from the internet asks, Dahlia Fayak from the internet asks if you could please comment on activities in standards development. In specific, is there a plan for provincial or national standards?
Well, first of all, there is quite a bit of work underway, both on a national basis, and a really good reference person for that is a friend of mine, Catherine Hanna at Calgary. And if anybody's interested, I can send your email address. She's probably one of the best-known international standards people in health in the world, but certainly in Canada. Each province has independently created a standards organization. I don't know what this will mean at the end of the day. We'll have a data standard here and a data standard there, how it will ever come together. But years ago, BC did it, at least 6 years ago. BC did it, maybe 7. I gave a talk to their committee. That's the only reason I know that. In Ontario, this is under something called OHISC, Ontario Health Information Standards Committee or Council, OHISC. You can look that up. And there has been a lot of complaint that OHISC is not keeping up with the requirement of defining standards. But each time they try to do something, it rains on someone's parade. And it means huge change. And it seems that the industry, meaning the health organizations and so on, are afraid of the investment required to meet the standard. Nonetheless, there needs to be a standard and a recognition that it's going to take years and millions, billions probably, to actually implement the standard. But to give you a simple example, if you go to a hospital information system, it's got a radiology information system in it, and you change the vocabulary, you'll have to re-implement part of that system at an unknown cost. So OHISC is the organization. I think they're trying hard. I think they're up against something very, very challenging. But I have never reviewed it in depth to tell you what the issues are.
Okay, there's one more question from the web. It's regarding tactics by Clinton Chow. He asks, what role do you see open source software playing in eHealth versus relying solely on commercial vendors?
I don't have a good answer for that one. To me, open source is an option. What you get from the vendors is functionality. If you want a system that's going to exist, you better have somebody that's putting money into it because these things cost hundreds of millions of dollars to create. Estimated cost for a hospital information system must be close to $500 million right now to build a new one. And getting a part of the market is extremely challenging because it's many people in it. It's a saturated market in a lot of cases. Functionality, if you need it, you need somebody to create it. And we don't have the people in the institutions to create it. So the danger here would be that an institution got a system and then became the open source add-on agent. And I can tell you hospital after hospital has tried it. University of Alberta created a system. It was called Unicare. Failed on the market. Sick Children's created a system. Tried to offer it through Singapore. Failed on the market. And there are many other examples of that. So I think the solution has to come from outside the health system, from people who invest in it. And if some company starts with an open source capability, I guess there's no problem with that. They're going to have to build value add onto it, and it's going to be then proprietary. But it should be open system. In other words, it needs to be able to have standard communications pathways. It needs to be able to use standard database technology. SQL-type queries need to be done, for example. So there's a difference between open source, where you can get a system, modify it, and grow it, and so on, versus open system, where you have the potential for interaction and connectivity and so on. So poor answer to that, but hopefully it helps. And
while we're getting the mic over to the other side, maybe I'll just ask a question. What do you think is the single, you identified a number of issues. What do you think is the single most important one?
Well, it's to me, the issues are between two things, business case and human resources. And every day I'll change the order of those. But unless we know what we're doing and why we're doing it, we have no idea where to put our money. If something doesn't work, if it's critical, and we put more money into it. You've heard this saying, we lost sight of our objectives and redouble our efforts. That happens, you know. But unless we know the importance of something and compared to other things, which has got to be linked to the kind of business outcomes you've want, you can't make sane investments. It's all arbitrary. It's a flavor of the day investment. or who's pushing. The human resources thing overlaps with that because unless we have people in the system who are somewhat aloof from the the technical ditty stuff and have a strategic approach to these systems, whether it's in the research side or in this case the deployment side, you're going to be nowhere. So unless we have highly trained, capable human resources, we're in trouble. So one with the other, I think. I'll take the one on the back here and then. Okay, sorry.
Listening to you, I would have to start to believe that a fair amount of the success for this kind of project would come from the willingness to adopt and use by the physicians themselves. So what's being done to stimulate physician adoption somewhere along the way?
Well, Don could probably answer this better than I can, but what I know about it, the reason that the MD portal thing, the Ontario MD portal exists, I was at a presentation at the Hospital's eHealth Council in which it was said that the current objective of that portal was to do exactly that, to create an adoption culture among physicians. I don't personally believe that'll work, but that is the claim. There is money in this project, by the way, in the Ontario MD project, where there's partial support for a physician's acquisition of systems. There are issues about that, but physicians will go for it when it becomes A, really useful, and they see it as useful, and B, that it's good enough to do the job that they see useful to do. I mean, I don't see physicians being any more resistant to technology. A friend of mine, Erica Drazen, back in the 80s said, wait do you see when resistance changes to insistence? And that's what we have in a lot of cases, insistence. But when you go and get a system and it's bad, or it doesn't do for you what you want, that doesn't foster, what I'll call firm adoption. And you have a lot of physicians that are operating at the margins of affordability for anything. Investing in this is a big problem. And they're not techies. I mean, physicians and systems are kind of oil and water in some ways. And they'll probably be dependent on the receptionist or some staff person who takes an interest in it rather than themselves. Now, there are exceptions. I mean, I was talking to Alex. You can comment, perhaps you can comment on this, who's involved right now in the getting a system for a new kind of practice. Bill Flaxton is another one here. These are people who believe in systems, want them, but it's a year now you've been looking around, and it's not obvious. It's not an obvious investment. I don't know. Is it possible that you could? Do you want to comment on that?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Dominic. Can everyone hear me? Is this on?
Yeah.
So I'll try the Veal folks. I'm here all week. There is a huge gap in adoption. Everyone has seen the adoption cycles that exist. Just to put this in perspective, I'm a business person as well as an MD, so I have an MBA and an MD. And I think the business case, if I was to say there were two elements to this, the business case is the major element. And it's the major element for physicians. So if you're a family physician and you're working in a solo practice and someone comes to you and says, I want you to invest $50,000 in an EHR system, it's extremely difficult to do that. Because we have to remember that most physicians are small business people, and they don't have significant resources to do that. Second, if you go to medical schools, you realize, and residency training, that there is no training in anything to do with electronic medical records or any sort of technical training. So that's where the HR element comes into it, and I think Dominic's exactly right. You'll see most physicians not being the individuals who adopt this. This will be their support staff in their office that do this. So if there were two barriers to be broken down, it would be affordability, number one, and second, to give the physicians the ability to have some tech training to understand why this would be of benefit to them. And I guess if there was a third thing to say to this, it goes back to exactly what Dominic said, is show physicians that this can be helpful to them. Because the last thing physicians want is a system that doesn't actually work.
Yeah, just comment. We have a request now of several agencies to create a new program called the Informatics-Enabled Clinician, which is meant to be like a course over multiple weeks, largely by distance, that turns a physician into a modern physician, I'll call it. A physician who knows the basics, but not going into health informatics, but knows enough health informatics to be able to search the literature or put in a system, at least knows what needs to be done. That training is absent from most of our medical schools. And someone just sent me a survey. It's being done, an international survey on how much time should be spent in medical school on that. Well, if you ask for any more than 10 minutes, you got a problem. I said 80 hours, and I have 60 hours. I'm sorry. I have a reason for that. I actually studied that, and I think that's what it would take. We got to cram that somehow into the medical curriculum. Good luck. Sorry.
Question there.
Where are we at?
Fellow in the black shirt. Yes.
One of the things that it seems to me, and my background is in engineering, but it seems to me that this is very analogous to a supply chain problem in that you have to marshal a bunch of resources in order to have a good outcome for a patient, for instance. But I think that it also speaks to the problem of the business case, because when you enjoy benefits across a supply chain, it's very difficult to come up with a way to equitably distribute those benefits between the participants in the supply chain. And I think that there's a lot of analogies. Somebody mentioned the analogies in finance. I think it would be very useful to look at the analogous ways that this problem has been addressed in the supply chain community, because it seems to me to be a one-to-one relationship here. Have you found that to be? I mean, is there anybody researching what's been done in supply chains to see how it can be brought to bear here?
Well, there are people in health informatics. Merck is one. McMaster, I don't know the ER Research Center yet. Merck. I was just there. Norm Archer is a guy I know there, and they're of course very big in supply chain and have married a number of those things with e-business, and then over right into the mobility and electronic health. So I would look at people at McMaster as one example. Ann Pittock was here from the University of Waterloo, and that's her specialty area is e-business, and but I don't know of what's been done. We have a number of people that are trying to study other domains, I'll call it. We're working. We have a student actually with a person right now who's looking at the problem of managing the health system as a natural resources management problem. He feels he sees an absolute parallel to of this, and it's interesting. It's leading to some interesting material. So we're trying to bring in some of these external paradigms. But that's another one that might be useful.
We have time for 2 more questions. Dawn first, and then fellow over there.
I'd just like to comment on the last 2 things. What we have here is a large number of independent businessmen who deliver health care. And we've got to convince every one of them that there's a benefit to them. And right now they can't see it. No, but the problem is, from their perspective, that's all that matters. I'm not saying they're not trying to do a good job. That's not the issue. But they're looking at it as a benefit to themselves. How can they run their practice better? How can they maximize the benefits that they perceive out of their practice? And quite often introducing this stuff, besides costing money, also costs them time. And they look at it and say, well, I can treat 3 more patients in the time that I've wasted using ICT or electronic health records or whatever you want to call it. So we've got in many organizations, you at least have a driver from the top. Here we have a driver from the top, but nobody's paying attention. I mean, and I'm just saying that a little strongly, I realize, but so.
There's some direct analogies in the automotive supply chain for how that was addressed.
That's true.
I think one question in the back.
One more question from the back, please.
I actually appreciate having had to wait because this sort of centralizes the discussion on the comment I wanted to make. Dominic, halfway through your talk, you drew an analogy with, and I believe this was to do with execution or how you execute this, of not wanting to build a car before you have a gas station and highway built. But of course, in history, that's precisely what happened. The car was first built, and then the infrastructure was built around it. And I think the one thing that we're missing in all these questions is how the patient fits into all of this. That's where the driving force really could come, is if the patient were equipped to say, this is something I want. And now, if you're not equipped to be able to provide the information that I have and to contribute to my personal health record, then I'm going to go someplace that does. Don't you think that's another strategy?
Oh, I think engaging the patient is critical. If you read the work under Leapfrog Group in the United States, they have taken a national political stance that the electronic health record, and order entry particularly, is absolutely essential. And they are pushing that. That's one of the reasons guys like Kennedy and what's his name? Anyway, the other politicos in the United States are pushing this, as their people are pushing it. So another one is ARP. the Association for Retired Professionals in the United States, is pushing this like mad. And there's a lot more old people now, so it's having an effect. No, I think going to the people is critical. The thing in Canada is that hasn't emerged. I don't know why. Maybe there's more complainers south of the border. It's too warm there or something. And the agencies have not gotten behind it for some reason. I don't know why. It may just be a cultural thing. It may be it's just a gap in time thing. But there has been the assumption that this is already done here. So people haven't gotten quite the message that what we have is a lot of little pieces of systems, that this concept of an integrated health system or an integrated e-health system are still largely fantasies. And they haven't recognized that yet. Until they hit the system, because somebody was saying to me today, how long did I wait last night at the emergency department at Grand River, and how many times they had to tell the same information to so many different people. After a while, you'll lie creatively just to mix them up. I have one question from the web.
There's 2 questions from the web. We'll take them. If we can quickly ask them or answer
I'll
them,
try
that'd
my
be great.
best.
So.
Yes and no, I'll get.
Okay, there are 2 quick questions. The first one from Dahlia Fayak. She asks, what skills do people working in HI, what skills should they have or what should they learn? How can we increase the 100 we have in the province, in the country to 1,000 per province? So how do we increase the number of HI professionals?
I can't give a short answer to that, but I would say look at our website and look for a document called Pointing the Way, which is a CIHR-funded research project report on competencies required. The latter part, I don't even know. We're doing our boot camp trick to bring 100 people at a time, but I don't know the answer right away. If I knew the answer, I'd do it.
So the second question from Bill Bombier. Is there a sense that the family health networks could allow opportunities for improved electronic records?
Improve what?
Is there a sense that the family health networks could allow opportunities for improved electronic records?
Absolutely. In fact, we've been working with Neil Arya in the Center for Family Medicine, I believe it's called, in creating a web space that integrates with their clinical information system, because we see that as a sort of a fundamental unit, as does the province. So to me, the family health team concept is an important concept in and of itself, and just supporting it is an important aspect of eHealth. So we're trying to put resources in, and the J.W. Graham Trust here at the University of Waterloo has funded that work. So I see that as something that's a real contribution. And okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dominic, for all these questions and answers. So, Dominic, before you sit down, could you help me with this draw? So, ta-da-da-da-da. We are now.
I can't draw.
This is the second time we'll be drawing for.
She's short, so I can see it.
For a BlackBerry donated by RIM. If you don't get it this time, there's 7 more chances.
Carla Cockerline. L-I-N-E-C-O.
Here or on the web? No, so. On the web. So
Carla, congratulations.
Congratulations.
You have won a RIM pager.
Yes, I have it here. I'll accept it on behalf of
Carla. I'm not allowed to say that. I have to say a BlackBerry. I did it again.
All right.
Our
so
sponsor will be
we'll arrange to get this to Carla. So congratulations, Carla. And just to wrap up, we'll see you next month, March 22nd, when Ernie Wallace will be talking about the Ontario Laboratories research or project. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for participating in the whole event. See you next month.